Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to England once again and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, and I think it's fair to say that this brewery are a kind of solid all-rounder. They're not particularly famous for any one style, but they are known for just doing some really nice drinkable beers. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a special version of one that I've heard from English beer tubers is very, very good. And I think we could also say that this is a sub-style of this kind of style that I have been getting very, very interested in recent times. So when I saw this beer coming through Systembolag over here in Sweden, it was one that really just kind of piqued my interest, and I thought, bugger it, why not? Let's get one of these and do a review of it here on the channel. And it's also my first review from this brewery in about 2 years actually, so hopefully this one lives up to my expectations or what I know this brewery is capable of. So yeah, let's see how we go. For this review then, we are going to head to Derbyshire, which is almost right smack in the middle of England actually. We're going to go to a little place called Longston, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Thornbridge Brewery. So this particular beer is called Necessary Evil. It comes in at 13% ABV. It's the Cognac barrel-aged edition, and this is therefore an Imperial Stout aged in Cognac barrels. So yeah, this should be very, very nice. I know several of the English beer tubers have reviewed the original Necessary Evil. I unfortunately missed out on that one when it came through here in Sweden. I think I was away somewhere, unfortunately. But I know my good friend Raggy over at Raggy's Beer, Wines and Spirits Review has done a review of this one. I think I actually watched his stream of that review, if I remember correctly, but he really raved about the original, and that was one of the main motivations for getting the Cognac barrel-aged one, and I do love Cognac barrel aging. I think it's a very, very interesting thing actually. You get some really, really nice flavours out of it. But yeah, as I say, this was just a beer that piqued my interest, and I thought, bugger it, why not? So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. My first beer from Thornbridge Brewery in about 2 years or something like that, so hopefully this is a good one. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Thornbridge Brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Thornbridge Brewery then. So Thornbridge Brewery is of course attached to the Thornbridge estate, and this also has a very long history. So Thornbridge Hall goes back to the 12th century, and it was the home of the Longston family until the late 18th century, at which time it was bought by John Morwood. So the house changed hands many times over the coming years, and it was extended into its current form in 1896 by George Marples. So the house was also a teacher training college for a period after 1945, at which time it was owned by Sheffield City Council. So the house is currently owned by Jim and Emma Harrison, who bought it back in 2002, and the couple also own a few pubs. There's the Cricket Inn in Totley, the Coach and Horses next to the Sheffield United Stadium, and also the Inn in Tronway, which are all part of the kind of Thornbridge umbrella company. But Jim also owns the Packhorse pub in Little Longston as well. So the estate itself can be found in Great Longston in Derbyshire, and you know, as I say, that is pretty much right in the middle of England. If you go to Sheffield and I think south, if I'm remembering the map correctly, that is where you'll find Derbyshire. But in the early days, it was Jim, along with Simon Webster, who recruited two young brewers and then converted some outbuildings next to Thornbridge Hall before the Thornbridge Brewery Company was officially founded in 2005. The original brewery that they had was a small 10-barrel operation, and they produced their first beer that year, which was the Lord Marples Bitter, and that was a core range beer for quite some time. I think they still do it periodically as well. But see, the brew house was actually a converted joiner and stonemason's workshop, and initially they just wanted to produce a small small range of cask beers for the local market, but they proved to be very popular, and this led to them sort of bottling the beers, and these days they're canning them as well. But since 2009, the larger part of the brewery's production has gone on at their new headquarters in Bakewell. However, some of the beers are still brewed on the traditional infusion mash system that they have in the old brewery. So I think there are small batches and things still brewed in the small brewery. But the main brew kit that they have in the new brewery comes from Velo in Italy, and I believe that's where their canning line comes from as well. But in 2015, they celebrated their 10th anniversary, and today their output now exceeds 30,000 hectolitres of beer per year. So pretty damn high, I have to say. One of the bigger by volume producers of craft beer in England. But since 2009, the brewing operations have been expanded 3 times, and they've grown their exports significantly. And they've got a tap room at the brewery as well, I believe, too. But as of May 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 320 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. And as I said to you, they do a variety of different styles. Probably their flagship beer would be the Jaipur IPA. But yeah, that's one that I don't think I've ever reviewed on the channel, come to think of it. So that is something that I do need to get round to doing at some point. Although I've heard that Jaipur can be a little bit of a mixed bag because of how widely available it is these days. But yeah, that is everything that I can that's everything that I can tell you about Thornbridge Brewery for the moment. So if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit about all the different beers that they've done thus far. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a wee look at the beer itself. So I took a few notes from the brewery website about this one. So as we said earlier, this one is a 13% Imperial Stout. It's aged in cognac barrels for 8 months. It didn't say what specific type of cognac barrel it was aged in, but this one is hopped with Hallertau Magnum from Germany, and the malt base contains Maris Otter, Munich, Brown, Crystal, chocolate and roasted malts, along with oats and wheat. So yeah, pretty extensive malt base in this one, I have to say. So yeah, as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty simple. This is a slightly different colour from the original Necessary Evil. I think the Necessary Evil is like black with white writing on it, if I remember correctly. But there you can see at the top very clearly the Thornbridge Brewing symbol. This one, as we said earlier, 13% ABV. I believe I paid 140 Swedish kroner for this one. So that is 140 Swedish kroner is maybe about £12 sterling, something like that, about 14 euros, and I guess somewhere in the region of, what's that going to be, maybe about $16 American, something like that. So yeah, a little bit of an expensive beer, but this was one of these moments where I was just like, you know, fuck it, why not? It literally was like that, because I really wanted to try the original Necessary Evil. So when I saw it coming through Systembolaget, I was like, oh, I really want to try this one. I want to try it this year. But then when I saw it was the cognac barrel aged one, I was like, I love cognac barrel aging. So this beer, it was expensive, but it was a case of just fuck it, why not? But yeah, it says on the back here, this limited edition of Necessary Evil has been aged in cognac barrels for 8 months. The character of candied fruit and light spice from the cognac works beautifully to complement the silky and complex Imperial Stout. Best served around 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, so take out the fridge for a while before serving, and it has been sitting for a wee bit as we've done this video. Whilst the beer will age well, there is no time like the present, so we recommend opening and enjoying it as soon as possible. So yeah, that should be good. So this is incidentally a 375ml bottle, this one. And I have to say, you know, when I think about it, for what the beer is and the fact that it's barrel aged, and it's imported here to Sweden as well, it's actually a fairly decent price for what it is. I can't remember what we were going to pay for the original Necessary Evil, but yeah, should be interesting. So if you're watching from England, do let me know what you would pay for this beer in the comment section below. And there you can see the Thornbridge bottle cap on this one as well. There you go. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. A 13% cognac barrel aged Imperial Stout. This will be pretty awesome. I'm just going to try and be careful with this bottle cap because it looks quite nice, and I would quite like to keep it. And it's a bigger one too, there we go. So yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's get this guy out and into the glass then. Here we are. Yeah. This is going to be pretty awesome. This is just going to be my evening sipper because I've got some work to do. But yeah, this will be just my nice evening sipper beer, I have to say. So yeah, there we are. There we are. So yeah, anyway, as you can see, and as you would expect, it's poured a lovely, big, dark, ebony rosewood colour. Yeah, the head on this one, before it disappears, I would say that it's poured with just a little bit under a half finger of a frothy. I would say kind of, yeah, it's poured with just under a finger of a frothy. I would say kind of light beige coloured head, kind of fawn colour. That's fading away though to be a very thin foamy layer. That's kind of what you would expect with a big high alcohol Imperial Stout, though they don't retain their heads all that long, to be honest with you, for the most part. But yeah, as you can see, lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If we shine the light through this one, it does have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi colour edge to it. But yeah, there's not a lot of light coming through this one, and I would hazard a guess that that's because of the oat and the wheat content. They tend to haze up the beer a little bit. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. A big Imperial Stout like this, I would hazard a guess, has a very long wort boil. We'll probably be able to tell a little bit from the taste in this one, because usually when you've got a long wort boil, you get these big sort of leathery kind of like brown sugary notes out of the beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in can also affect the colour of the beer as well. But usually in an Imperial Stout, that's quite difficult to pick up. It's more the kind of quadruples and barley wines and Scotch ales and doppelbocks and stuff like that where you notice differences in the colour. Not so much in black beers like this. But yeah, it certainly looks very, very nice, this one, but nothing untoward about its appearance when you consider what style of beer this is. But let's take a look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this beer then. I'm really curious about this. Not a lot of visible carbonation in this one, I would say, either, but again, that's quite common with barrel aged beers. It's pretty interesting. I'm going to say straight away, the thing that's interesting me about this is that it doesn't smell overly kind of complicated, if you like. It actually smells in some ways really quite straight shooting. It smells like an old school stout, just with the cognac barrel aging, as odd as that is to say. But it does smell really, really nice. The cognac barrel aging, I will say, does dominate the aroma a little bit. So I very much like how that goes together in this particular beer. It is very nice. Yeah. So where to start with this one? The backbone of this beer, you can absolutely smell. You can smell that nice, smooth, oaky wood in there. It's absolutely lovely. On top of that, you can get these big kind of dry fruity notes out of the cognac. So, you know, it's got this kind of like, pardon me, it's got the woody character that's there. You do get a wee bit of vanilla out of it. So you've got that nice, smooth, woody character, a wee bit of the kind of, vanilla and things. Yeah, smooth wood, nice little bit of vanilla, wee touch of nuttiness in there. It goes together really nicely in that sense. But then on top of that, you've got all these sort of dry fruity notes. There's a bit of prune in there. There's a bit, a lot of prune for me. A good little bit of date. Some kind of sultanas. You're kind of smelling all this kind of stuff infused into the wood. That dry fruity character from the cognac is really, really nice. Actually, I like how that goes together. And it actually, as I say, that kind of dominates the beer. You do get a little bit of a kind of fruit cakey note on top of that as well. The aroma of this, I think the more that this beer, obviously it's getting some air into it, it's warming up a wee bit. I think you really get the, you really start to get the aroma coming out of this. You can smell more and more of the stout rather than the barrel aging coming out of the beer now. So that's really interesting. But yeah, on top of the, the barrel aged side of things, then you can smell there is a nice little bit of bread crust there, like a bit of that brown bread crust. Absolutely. I can smell There is a bit of brown bread in there, but I can really smell some of the kind of more leathery. I can smell some of the nice kind of leathery, brown sugary elements coming out of this beer as well. So I think this one maybe has had quite a long wort boil before it's gone in to the into the barrels. But yeah, as I say, bit of bread crust. You can smell a kind of thicker brown bready note in there. Leathery brown sugars, absolutely. And there is a wee bit of a kind of chocolatey note coming out of this one. But that's kind of dominated by the fruit. You can smell a little bit of an almost kind of dry cocoa nibby note. It's like a sort of 40, a sort of, maybe about a 50% cocoa chocolate sort of thing. It's a wee bit stronger than that. So yeah, you do get a wee bit of that dry cocoa nib, 50% cocoa chocolatey thing coming out of this one. So yeah, I do really like how I do really like how that goes together. Yeah, see, brown bread, bread crust, a little bit of brown bread. You do start to get more cakey notes within that as well. Then you've got some big leathery brown sugars, wee touch of nutty character, I think, as well. Then you've also got just a wee bit of that kind of dry cocoa nibby chocolate coming out of this beer as well. Yeah, it almost has a wee bit. This beer does have a little bit of an almost kind of tobacco-y sweetness to it as well. I think that's certainly fair to say. Yeah, I do like how the aroma goes together in this one. This is certainly quite interesting from that perspective. Absolutely. Yeah, aroma-wise, this is very, very nice on the malty side of things. Carbonation, I can hear the carbonation kind of bubbling away in it as well, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else we need to say about the malty side of this beer, to be honest with you. On the hoppy side of things, and this is the thing, the hoppy side of the beer will have dropped out because it is a barrel-aged beer, but you do actually get a little bit of you get a wee bit of earthiness in it, and it's a smooth earthiness because it's a German hop, but you still get a little bit of a floral character and also a kind of grassy sort of thing with this one too. So yeah, there's quite a wee bit of yeah, there's quite a bit of there's quite an interesting mix of things going on with this one. As I say, a little bit of grassiness in there, some floral aromaticity, and yeah, I think that goes together very, very nicely in that. So having a wee bit of hoppy character adds a wee bit more depth to the beer. On the fruity side of things, on the actual hoppy side of the fruit, there's a lot of raisin for me. There's definitely some big oily plum and some sharper blackberry as well. And then you've got as we said earlier, you've got all the fruits from the barrel aged side of thing coming out of this beer as well. But I have to say the aroma of this one is very, very nice. It takes a bit of time to kind of open up. The more that it takes a wee bit of time for the aroma to open up on this one, just as the beer gets a bit of oxygen into it and it warms up and so on. So give it a wee bit of time, but enjoy the aroma of it as you drink it. But I think we are going to have a taste of this one now and see how we go. So yeah, this one is the Cognac barrel-aged version of Necessary Evil 2022 edition from Thornbridge Brewery in Derbyshire in England. Let's get stuck into this one and see how we go. Slange, Skål, cheers. 13% Cognac barrel-aged Imperial Stout. This is going to be a monster. Slange just now. Ooh. That is nice. Yeah, that's pretty good, I have to say. Big thumbs up to Thornbridge Brewery for this one. Yeah, it's kind of as I would have expected it to be. When it comes to like Thornbridge, these guys have a kind of almost like old school nature to their beers, but they still have a bit of modernity. They kind of tread that line between being a little bit old school, like the birth of craft beer. If you go back to the sort of, these guys were founded in 2005, so whenever I drink Thornbridge beer, it really reminds me of the more old school craft beers that I was drinking in sort of 2010, 2012, this kind of time. That's one of the reasons why I do quite enjoy the Thornbridge stuff. You do like a little bit of nostalgia when it comes to craft beer, And this one, this stout, you can feel that this is a very old school thing. It actually reminds me of some of the Finnish Imperial stouts that we had from Riku. How long was that? About a year ago or something now. So yeah, it really reminds me of that actually. Yeah. So, yeah. This is just very, very nice. So the first impression of this one is a lovely big smooth stout, nice and bready. Just, you know, it is really just very thick, and yeah, it really is just very, very thick, and how do we say, smooth, you know, smooth and almost creamy to an extent as well. But it's just really, really nicely done. Very, very impressed with this beer. I would love to try the original and just see what the original's like. But if the original has the same kind of smoothness and things that this one does, I think it would be pretty. It would go down pretty damn well actually. But big, big thumbs up to Thornbridge Brewery for this one. Let's just break this down then and describe it for you. We'll start with the middle third of the palate as we always do. So, yeah, middle third of the palate then. The backbone of this beer, you can feel that nice, smooth, woody. You can feel that nice, smooth, woody, oaky character in there. That is forming the backbone of the beer. Now, within the wood, if you go toward the front of that middle third of the palate, there's a wee bit of vanilla, a wee bit of nutty character in there. And that, again, goes together really quite well. So, on top of that, you can feel some of the fruity character coming out of the beer there. You can feel some of the kind of cognac side of things coming out of the beer. So for me, that's when you get the, you know, this is when you can feel the kind of dry, it's got a wee bit of like a sultana type vibe to it. You get the dried kind of pruny, datey character. But all of that, I would say, is infused into the woody backbone that the beer has. Cognac barrel aging is lovely. I always like these dry red fruity things. I always used to like raisins when I was younger. My gran always used to give me raisins and sultanas, and I just loved them. I loved dried fruit. I liked dried fruit better than normal fruit actually. But yeah, I love the kind of dried fruity flavour that you're getting out of these out of this beer. It's beautiful. But yeah, the woody backbone of this beer is just lovely. But once you drink it a little bit more, and once your palate adjusts to it, you start to get the actual stout rather than the barrel aged side of things coming out. So yeah, on top of the woody note, you can feel a little bit of the kind of roasty black malt backbone that this one has, and that does give the beer a wee bit of dryness the further you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, you start to get that that roasty toasty black malt backbone. On top of that, you can feel a thicker brown bready note out of this one. It's almost a little bit like a rye bread. It does have a wee bit of sweetness to it, but then you start to get the kind of wholemeal sort of thing. So you're getting these layers out of this beer. On top of that bread though, you can pick out a sort of, it's like a dry cocoa nibby character, and I find that that's a bit more prominent toward, that's a wee bit more prominent toward the back of that middle third of your palate. Yeah. So yeah, you get a wee bit of as we say, you get a little bit of that kind of dry cocoa nibby character, and I'd say the sort of chocolatey notes that you get out of this one are a wee bit more how would you say it? It's like a sort of, it's a bit more high cocoa, you know, it's like a 70-80% cocoa chocolate you get out there. You can just feel that. But then as you move further forward, you get a nice kind of leathery layer out of the beer, and you get that kind of big, oily, leathery, brown, sugary character out of this one. So I really like how that goes together as well. Yeah, so you get that nice big smooth leathery brown sugary vibe to this beer, and it starts to sweeten up as well with this one. So you can feel that on that leathery layer, you can feel that it's really concentrated in the middle of the palate, but you can also feel, in fairness, the thing that I'm noticing with that kind of leathery brown sugar is that it feels a bit oaty as well. You can really feel the oats just smoothing out the middle of the beer there. So I think in front of the chocolatey there, you've maybe got the layer of oats, and then the brown sugar sits on top of that. And as I say, the brown sugar feels leathery. It's not madly sweet. It's just got a little bit of dryness to it. So I like how that goes together in this one as well. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah. The way that this beer goes about its business in the malty side of things, I think, is really nice. Perhaps towards the edge of the palate, you get a wee bit of a very slight biscuity note out of this one. But the kind of bready, the way that the wood and the kind of bready and brown sugary parts, the way that this beer is just layered as it is, I think is very, very nice. It's a beautiful Imperial Stout, this, and I can see, if this is anything like the original, which it will be obviously, but a bit more barrel aged, a bit more of the dry fruity side coming out. I can see exactly why Raggy would rave about this one. He really enjoyed the original, I remember. But yeah, this is pretty awesome. I need to get a bottle of the original. I really do. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate on this one. So let's look at the back third. Border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready. You get a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. A wee bit of bread crust and things. The base of that back third of your palate is a wee bit more, you get a wee bit more of a kind of roasty, toasty, black malty sort of thing. On top of that, you can feel the brown bready layer is a bit thicker, for sure. You do get a bit of that thicker, more dense brown bready layer. On top of that, and you can feel the bread is a bit more grainy, so you get the roasty, toasty black malt, the thicker and slightly more grainy brown bready note, and then on top of that, you can feel a more dense, doughy, bready, yeasty sort of thing, which I think works. So you've got a little bit of that, how do you say, you've got a little bit of that, you've got a bit more of a kind of grainy bread crust around the edge of it. So that, again, for me, works really well in this one. Yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business, I think, is nice on that back third of the palate too. So the back third of the palate is a wee bit more simple. The roasty, toasted black malt, the thick brown bread, grainy side of things, and then you've got the yeasty part of it too. So you can feel on the back third of the palate, the beer is very much, the flavour is very much taller. Then as you move into the middle third of the palate, it just condenses down as you go into that middle third, and then everything's a wee bit more squashed together. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. It's a big thumbs up from me. The malty and barrel aged side of this beer is absolutely lovely. Let's focus on the hoppy and fruity side of things then. So, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, the beer gets a little bit herbal, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, you get a little bit more floral aromaticity out of it, and round the front curve of the tongue, it's just a little bit lighter and more grassy, in a sense, I would say. So I do like how that goes together with this beer too. The little bit hoppy character you get, I think, is very, very nice. On the as we say, the other thing to remember about this is that hoppy side of the beer I've just described is quite smooth, because this is a barrel aged beer. Most of the hoppy character will have dropped out of it. But let's focus on the front third of the palate and the other things that are going on. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there. The base of the front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of, you get a little bit of that more smooth, woody character underneath, but then you get a wee bit of the brown bread. You can feel the oats sort of in there as well. So the base of that front third of your palate is very smooth, and then on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So if we go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you get this big fruit roll, cakey sort of thing out of the beer. So there's a bit of sultana. I think the base fruit in this beer is like a sort of sultana, a dried white green grapey sort of thing. But then on top of that, you do certainly get some of the sharper raisins and the juice and the kind of drier prunes underneath. Not sure, I think there is maybe a wee bit of plum in there as well, but yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. So the base fruit, as I say, is like a sort of dry sultana. You've got raisins, plums, and then a drier kind of prune underneath. As you move further forward, you get a wee bit of a kind of dainty sort of thing. And the wood, on that front third of your palate, I think the dryness of the wood really comes out the further you go into it. But as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, you've got a wee bit more of a kind of black curranty sort of thing, and then a more oily black berry the further into the aftertaste that you go. But I would say the blackberry isn't overly present. It's really the more dried fruits that come out of this beer, the further into the aftertaste that you go. So I do really like how that goes together in this particular beer. Yeah, the fruity side of this one and the woody side of it, I think, is the highlight for me. I love cognac barrel aging, but you can tell that behind that cognac barrel aging is a really solid old school Imperial Stout, and I really like that too. So I really, really want to try the original Necessary Evil. So I need to see about sourcing a bottle of that from somewhere. That is something that is definitely on the list. Maybe Valhalla's Goat in Glasgow would have one, so I need to check that out. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour. Let's just round off with the mouthfeel then. So, mouthfeel wise, for me, this beer, it is, you know, in the middle of the full bodied range. It's not the thickest Imperial Stout I've come across, but it's getting there. Because it's barrel aged, you will sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to get all these infused flavours. I've always found that with barrel aging it, these beers are just not quite as thick as the originals. Quite a few breweries will compensate for that. They'll brew a special batch of the beer and put more oats and stuff in it to thicken it all up. But yeah, this one for me is in the mid-range of the full-bodied thing. It's very, very smooth, and I think it's quite silky in a sense. It's got a good bit of dryness to it as well because of the barrel aged side of things, and I think that works. So the malty, woody side of this beer, it goes together really, really nicely in that way. I would say that you have a mix of you've got a whole host of things going on. When it comes to IBUs with this beer, I think this is about 60 or 70 IBUs, but it's a bit difficult to say just because there's quite a bit of dry character to the beer. But the malty side of things is smooth. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it, and the way that everything goes together, I think, is really, really nice. The fruity side of this beer, as I say, it's got a nice big oily fruit character to it, but there's some real dryness in there too. And I do have to say I like how that side of this beer comes together. It's a really, really nicely done beer, this one, and it gets a big, big thumbs up from me. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, but I think this is one of these beers that you drink once and you simply enjoy. So yeah, don't regret paying the 140 Swedish kronor for this one at all. I think this has been a really nice one-off beer to review here on the channel, so a big, big thumbs up to Thornbridge Brewery from me. I think we can leave it at that for this one. Bit of a longer review this, but you know, sometimes some of these beers deserve a little bit more time just to examine. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Thornbridge Brewery as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. The original Necessary Evil is certainly on my radar now, so I'll get one of those if I do happen to come across it. But yeah, this was the Necessary Evil Cognac Barrel Aged Edition from 2022 from Thornbridge Brewery in Great Longston, or Bakewell, in Derbyshire in England. Really enjoyed this one. But check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys on another review very, very soon. Slange it, skull, cheers, and catch you guys in the next review.